everybody. Welcome to another edition of Haas Talks. And joining me in studio today, the only way that I was going to race for him was if he came on the show, so we were coming to an agreement. He's sticking up to his side. It's Kieth Kunz. Kieth, thanks for taking time from working on those cars to come up and chat with me, man.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Let's just dive right in. Let's talk about what's going on now. Everybody knows your story. You come from rags to riches, or at least you're eating nice ramen noodles, you know, 4 days a week.
Exactly.
It hasn't always been easy, but you've put in a lot of work throughout, what is it, like 15 years?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I just been around a long time. Just grew up in racing, you know, my family and all that, and was fortunate. And, you know, me and my brother kind of had a car there for a while, and we had some success, you know, and got around some good people and some really good drivers, you know, back in the early 90s. And, you know, was able to win the Chili Bowl with Andy Hillenberg here in Oklahoma, and Paige Jones, you know, won Belleville, and things kind of took off from there. And, you know, got hired as a crew chief a couple of times, and eventually got hooked up with Pete Willoughby, and the two of us kind of partnered up, and here we are today.
And now the rest is history. Everybody knows. I mean, the legacy and the history that you guys have built together. The relationships, you say that, you know, you've had a lot of good relationships with different drivers, but not only drivers, but sponsors and people that have kind of helped you along the way. Talk to us a little bit about some of the relationships that you have with, like, Toyota, and, like, how all those come about. I mean, is that something where one day you get an email and it's like, bing, Toyota wants to talk to you?
Yeah, you know, I've been forward, you know, back from, you know, originally back in 1990, you know, Rich Vogler was driving for me. And when he started driving for me, you know, he really kind of put us in contact with a lot of good race car products and stuff like that. You know, got me hooked up with Advanced Shocks and Hoosier Tire, and, you know, I got to know those guys. And then as I moved on through my career, you know, I've been really loyal with them guys, and have been with them since the early 90s or 80s, you know. And you know, and then through drivers and winning big races and that, you know, everybody wants to get on board. And, you know, I've been just about with every motor company. You know, I've won USAC championship with the Fontanas and the Esslingers, and, you know, I've been with Gary Stanton and the Mopar stuff, and you know, really Steve Lewis was pretty much the dominant guy there in the 90s, and we were able to race with him, you know, through the 2000s, and, you know, won our share. But Steve was kind of the guy. And then when the time came that, you know, he decided he wanted to go to the Toyota program, Toyota started up, you know, he was their initial house team that kind of helped them get things going. And then, you know, him and Bob East kind of went their own separate ways. Bob was still the Ford guy. And then I think about 3 years into that, you know, Steve decided that he was going to retire from midget racing. And Gary Reed was in charge of the Toyota program, and I knew Gary from being at the races, and, you know, they were sponsoring midget racing, so we all knowed each other. And Gary actually is the one who came to us and said, you know, Cole Witt won the championship in 2006, and at the end of 2006, or it was actually 2008, at the end of 2008, Gary came to us and said, you know, we was actually on an S-Slinger that year. And Gary came to us and said, you know, we want Cole, you know, in a Toyota. You know, what do we got to do to get together? So for 2009, they sponsored us, you know, Cole, that one car. We still had S-Slingers and all of the rest of our stuff. And, you know, we run 2009 and kind of really struggled. You know, we went from winning the championship, winning races, to really about a 7th place car, you know, on most given nights. And, you know, Toyota was in that growing period, and went through 2009 and into 2010. I had Brian Clausen running my pavement car, and Dave Darlin running all the dirt stuff that year, 2010. And Brian, you know, was winning races in his family stuff on the dirt. We were so-so on our stuff. And the very last race of 2010, Toyota came out with a new configuration. It was a new head, new injection, and we went to Turkey Night, Irwindale, and we went out and practiced, and I instantly knew we had something all of a sudden, because I was really at 2010. It was like, this
kind of a make it or break it.
Yeah,
type of time.
we're struggling. We got to do something different. And that was the same time they got together with Gary Stanton and Rick Long from Speedway Engines, and kind of developed this new motor. And we ended up going out and winning Turkey Night. That was the first race we'd won in 2 years. After and went kind of through a dry spell. And from there on, it was, it was a different game. And then Brian was going back to his parents, run their stuff full time in 2011. We were looking for somebody, and we knew we had a good package. And we were at the Chili Bowl 2011, and I told Pete, I said, watch this kid over here in Glenn Crosnow's car. And he went out and watched him in hot laps, came back and said, that's our guy. And that was Kyle Larson.
Yeah.
And that same time Kyle came on, we had a new motor package, and
everything was kind of just firing on all four cylinders.
Yeah, and from there it just kind of went crazy.
So whenever you're growing up and you're racing with your brother and everything else, did you ever imagine yourself having such a large team? Was it always a goal to have a big team, or were you like, we're just going to race out of the garage and do this type of deal?
I mean, not even a clue. Growing up, I mean, I drove a little bit. I've been around racing all my life. Like I say, my family's always been in it, and my brother Rusty, had midgets, and we run Illinois, Missouri, Mara, St. Louis organization, all that kind of stuff. Rusty won the Hut 100 in 1979 with Johnny Parsons. That was a deal where he showed up at the racetrack. My cousin Duke was driving it, and it was Volkswagen days, and they were kind of struggling, and Parsons blew up, and they got him after hot laps, put him in the car, he qualified it, and they won the race. And that kind of helped my brother, and got us some notoriety. And that was in 79, so everybody knew who we were. But just growed up around that. I was probably 16, 17 at that time. So I just growed up around it, and, I drove for about a year and a half in 80, 86, 87. I got in the car and drove for a little bit, didn't know a thing, wasn't worth the crap. I crashed one night, and it hurt bad, so.
Right.
My dad kind of told me, he said, you're done, I'm not raising your kids no more.
Yeah.
So I just kind of went to mechanic, and I was always able to get good guys to drive my stuff back then, Kevin Doty, Kevin Olson, guys like that drove for me, and Dairyland Association. So I started learning. Once I got good drivers, I just started learning how to work on them, and worked at our garage at home. And, like I say, and eventually when we won a couple of them big races, we were just, I'd go drive all night, go home, work a job, and it was just me and Rusty in our garage at home. I got a call one day from Gary Zarunian, and says, would you come out and help us? They had stealth cars back then. We were had the stealth cars, and we were really good, and we just won the Chili Bowl, and he said, would you come out and help me with Sleepy Trip? So, so I flew out there, and when I was out there, I talked him into hiring me, and so that was my first job in racing. I'd go home, talk to wife and stuff into moving to California.
Yeah.
So we packed up, moved to California, and worked for Gary Zernian for about 6 months, and then went to work for John Lawson, took care of Billy Boat for a couple years, and was ready to come back to the Midwest. And I was just a mechanic, and then I worked for Pete for about 3 years there, and times got tough, and he needed to kind of back out of the racing deal. And I was like, well, I'll go find a job. I'll go do something, And he's like, no, let's just keep racing. So we kind of started up a new team under my name, and just tried to survive, off of racing. We had no other income at all. Jay Drake was driving for us, and Jay had an awesome year there in 2000 in the sprint car, and we just lived off of that. And, it just things just kind of grew, people come to us and want to know how to get their kids in cars, in our car, so, we would rent a car out. We'd have a couple cars, we'd rent one out, and then Jay would drive one, Jay was our selling point at that point,
Right.
So, and that's how it all started, and, it just kind of grew. Me and Pete both just kind of took enough money to live on and didn't even do that most of the time, and put everything back into building up our equipment and buying stuff and just investing in the team. And it's just growed and growed and growed to the monster that it is today.
It seems like people don't understand the trials and tribulations that you go through. They see the glitz and the glamour of what you have now.
Yeah.
They don't realize what you've gone through to build what you have. I kind of consider you guys like the Harvard or like the Princeton of like the teams, right? Because you guys are the mega team or whatever you want to call yourselves. But it didn't happen overnight.
No.
And the other thing is that you have the right people in the right place. Yeah, Kieth Kunz is an amazing crew chief. He's an amazing guy. But you're not focused just on race car drivers.
Right.
You're focused on teaching these crew guys. And the thing that I find just absolutely amazing is the dedication that those crew guys have to the organization and how they all really buy in.
Yep.
How do you go about juggling that around? I mean, working with the younger guys.
Yeah, up until probably 4 years ago, I was crew chief and everything pretty much. Big Al was kind of with me, and Bo Bender have been with me for a long time. And, basically it was on the road, it was me and Big Al. He would take care of 3 cars. I would take care of 3 cars. We would do the same thing. We talk, and we'd make changes through the night. So, I mean, it was kind of like the 2 of us was crew chief and everything, at the same time. And I did that up until about 4 years ago, and then just got, being in it this long, you get tired, you get run down. Al left, decided to go do something different, and I had some guys there working for us, and Jared came on board, and Bo had been there for a long time, and kind of brought Jared in and just started teaching him, just work with me side by side, and he did that for maybe a month, maybe 2 months, and that was about the same time we got Buddy, and Buddy was a good race car driver, so I paired him up with Buddy, that way he had an experienced guy.
Mm-hmm.
That could the 2 of them could grow together, and you had a driver that knew what he wanted pretty much. So, and I took care of the younger kids, and then Buddy and Jarrett really kind of blossomed, and that went on for the first year or so, and then Kaz came on board, and Bo wanted to go back on the road, and they just, the guys that all worked there and everything, I finally just kind of, with like Jarrett, I stepped back, and he was still coming to me, and what do you think? And I'm like, the only way you're going to figure this out is you make those changes. You let Buddy, you let your driver know your changes. You guys talk. That way he understands what you did. I said, the only way you're going to figure out if that works or not is go do it. And kind of force them to be on their own. And then I just kind of took that step back and let them kind of, they really didn't struggle going through it, but, they understood everything, I think, a lot better. And I seen that me stepping away a little bit kind of brought everybody in there closer. They felt more like it's their team.
Yeah.
So, I've really done that more the last couple years, last year especially. I just totally step back. If they need me, they come see me. But, between Jarrett, Bo, and Kaz, they run that whole operation. They make 100% of all the calls. Me and Pete nowadays kind of just make sure they got what they need and get that to them, and then along with Jay, Jay in there kind of helps them guys, and it's just really worked good because all those guys, I think they feel like it's theirs. I've even kind of stepped back off of victory lane and stuff. Certain races I still want to get down there, get my picture taken with them. I'm proud, but
it's almost more rewarding to see them get that glitz and get the spotlight.
Yeah, I'm not that way. I'm not taking the credit away from them. They're getting it as a team, and man, I mean, they've just taken the bull by the horns and have really done a good job the last couple of years.
So you get drivers that approach you all the time that want to drive. Do you get crew guys that are like, hey, you know, we want to learn the biz, and
Yeah.
you tell them, here's the broom, be here Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
We're not taking you on the road yet. You're
We're always looking for crew guys, and that's the hard thing to find. The ones that are talented like Jarrett and some of them guys. We put a little thing out there on Facebook that we're hiring and stuff, and we got almost 100 applicants. So,
wow.
And basically what I've done there is I've let them guys,
Look through them, and
they go through. They have meeting once a week, and the whole team gets together, and when we're hiring stuff, they all sit down and they all go through the applications and start doing Zoom calls with them, and they actually pick the guys that who they want to hire. So. Instead of me just sticking somebody in there,
Right.
we've put the trust into them to even hire the people that's going to be on the team with them and stuff now. So, nowadays and it freed me up. I still want to do things, so it allowed me to put a sprint car together and go run a few races, the micro stuff. I was able to take off and go micro racing last year. Chad Ead, I've known Chad for a long time. Mariah wanted to come in and go racing, so I take care of Mariah and Chad now. I go to all the midget races with them, and that's my little project that I get to work with, and I don't have the pressure of the rest of it, and
right.
It kind of runs itself now.
Yeah. So you've always been a midget guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
What enticed you and kind of made you go towards doing a micro deal? Because it kind of came out of nowhere. Like there was one night you showed up here, and Dason, I think, drove Scott's cars.
Yep.
And I remember watching you from afar, and you're like, I was like, man, that's like not a normal, to me, that's not a normal Kieth, you were all about it.
Yeah. Well, we, of course, Dason came driving for me about 3 years ago and been running some micro stuff. And I think the kicker was, a couple years ago there at the shootout, I went down the shootout and hung out with Dason. He was driving for Ryan Tim's dad and running really good, so I kind of got excited about it, then. And then through the year, whatever, at the end of the year, Dason was supposed to run for Tim's a couple races, I think, at the end of that year, and then the shootout again. And I think there was a point there where didn't know for sure if it was going to happen or not, and me and Clint was kind of hanging out. I said, well, let's just put our own car. Let's put a micro together. So, Clint was like, yeah. So, we got with Scott Sawyer, and I think he came down and run Scott's car here, and I got to kind of watch and kind of learn what he was doing there and what kind of cars they built. And so they built us a couple cars, and I think we went to Millbridge at the end of the year and run really, really good before the shootout, and then went to shootout that year. And again, it just the micro thing really exploded. I had Dason driving for me. He was what my Jay Drake was back in 2000. Right. I had a guy that I could go win with, and then there's all of our kids that come to us nowadays are micro kids, right. Basically. They're moving up through the micros. So I seen that, and a lot of them came to me and wanted to get their kids in my micros. So, I kind of expanded my team. I mean, it happened so quick.
It really did. It seemed like overnight you had 2 cars, and then you had 6 cars, and then you...
Yeah, it just kind of blew up.
If you could probably have 10 or 15, just like your midget did.
Exactly, So I seen that as a stepping board. Gavin Miller was a good example. They came in really last year. So, he was my guy that I took all year long and progressed. We started winning some races there, late in the year, and he got better and better. And this year here, now he's, they've stepped into the midget, and we're going to do some midget racing. So that's kind of what we built that program for, was a stepping stone to get into, not just you're kind of immaculated with our team, that you kind of see.
Now you see how we work and how things go. And
so it was a good transition for all that. So, again, it's about finding help. I had Brady Forbrook all last year came. When I hired him, I didn't even know he was Brady Forbrook. I didn't know who he was. I'd seen this resume and I liked him, and then I figured out who he was. It's Guy Forbrook's son, and Brady was that guy that just, he was my right hand guy. could do absolutely anything. I didn't have to watch over him,
Right.
you know. I mean, took a lot of relief off of me, and you know, and he loved it. And then at the end of this year or last year, he got the chance to go back home, and he's actually racing Knoxville in a 360 this weekend for his dad.
Very
so
cool.
Yeah, so he couldn't turn that away, and you know, maybe someday, you know, he'll either keep racing sprint cars or hopefully, you know, come back and work for me. But you know, once I lost him, now I don't have no personal help,
Right.
you know, that can take a lot of that load off of me.
Yeah.
So I've kind of had to back my micro schedule down, and I get tired easy. I just done this for so long. I'm kind of in that. I'm in that retirement mode where I get excited for a few weeks and get a project going, and then I'm like, what am I doing?
What am I doing?
I got to back off of here.
Break. So you got the sprint car this year.
Yep.
Running that some. You've always been a guy that's been. You stand by your beliefs.
Yep.
You stand by what you believe in, whether it be a ruling, a call on the track, or the way that a series may treat a driver or whatnot.
Yep.
How do you take that into your promoting? Because now you're promoting races and putting races on. You do the Kieth Kunz Give Back Classic.
Yep.
Whenever you approach a racetrack, I know, of course, you've had your race here last year at Port City. How do you approach that? I mean, do you try to instill some of your Kieth values and senses into those shows?
Yeah, I do. You know, I know. For me, you know, putting on a race, you know, I want it to be an event. You know, I want it to be a show. You know, not just another night at the racetrack. You know, especially if you're putting on a big race like that. You know, and that's what I tried to do last year was, you know, really treat the sponsors right and get some, you know, notoriety and a lot of TV time and make it a show, make it an event, nice trophies, the whole bit, everything that I like when I go to these big races.
That gets you excited.
It gets me excited about racing, and I felt
you try and one-up them.
Yeah, and I felt like we did that last year, you know. So, and the same way with rules, you know, from racing, you know, I kind of have a pretty good feeling what most people like for you to do and not to do, and you know, so yeah, you just kind of instill your values into that event, you know, and try to make the least amount of drama.
Right.
And you know,
and that's hard to do sometimes.
That's hard to do sometimes, but
sometimes you're just left going.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you know, yeah, it's tough out there. The officials, and you know, it's a tough job. You know, racing's a hard. You know, midget racing has gotten to be, you know, so fast and so tight a race, and you know that things happen, and a lot of feelings get hurt, and it's tough calls for the officials, definitely.
Right. Looking forward for Kieth Kunz, for KKM, like where do you see this whole deal maybe going? Let's say 5 more years, 10 more years. Are you ever going to retire and be done and hand the reins over to the guys, or fully, or like what's the thought?
You know, more and more as the team can kind of go by, you know, it's just it kind of runs itself, you know, along with Pete Willoughby and Jay Drake, and you know, I'm still kind of the face of the thing, and the you know, have to deal with sponsors and dads. They all want to see me and everything, you know, so less and less involved in, you know, the mechanical end of it, and frees me up to do other stuff. And that's where I've kind of gotten into the promotion stuff, because I've really we've talked about it for a long time. Me and Pete has, you know, about maybe even owning a racetrack somewhere and doing something like that, you know.
Don't get too crazy now.
Yeah.
Don't get too crazy
That's a big step, you know. So the first step was, you know, this my race has kind of taken off, and I had a chance to do a promotion last year, so naturally I wanted to use that race as my stepping stone. You know, I'd like to, because the micro thing is so cool, you know, I'd like to see it grow. I want to grow it into, you know, kind of a mini series, maybe some races leading up to it. You know, I've talked about this for a couple years, you know, of, you know, maybe
like a prelude to the KKM.
Prelude to the KKM, you I've talked to some tracks in Pennsylvania, and I've thought about even California.
Oh, that would be really
having
cool.
some different stuff all over the country that leads into that one race. Whether it's having races that the winner is automatically in it or something like that. I just haven't. I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm thinking more and more of trying to have more races. Might be a year or two before I can do that, if I can even,
cool.
But yeah, that's a thought of where I'd like to go. It takes a lot of work, it takes a team of people. So, I've got to, just like running a race team, you have to put a team together to do that. I've done that with Kenny Brown. Me and him has kind of gotten together this year or last year and made that whole deal work. And, brought in Terry Maddox from the Now 600 to run their portion of it. And it was, about putting the right people in the right place and coming to Port City and
not trying to toot our own horns, but I feel like we had a pretty excellent show.
Yeah, you guys and Shane. I mean, it was just it's about putting all the right people together, put on a good product. We had a great weekend going all the way till Saturday night, and we kind of had a little mishap on the track. It kind of got away from us,
but it ended up.
Yeah, it was a late night.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, a late night, but it ended up being great racing. That Steven Snyder Jr. got to win, and went on to the Chili Bowl, and again, it wasn't the greatest turnout, but it was a learning curve, and a lot of good press and hype for the micro kids that are coming up. And there's so many good micro kids that are coming up. They're starting younger and younger, with the restrictors and the junior sprints. And, they have so much seat time by the time they're 14, 15, 16 years old now. So, the micro 600 deal is a great deal.
Throughout the years of racing, did you ever think that you would miss a qualifying night at the Chili Bowl for anything?
No.
So that's the last thing I want to talk about is family for you. Because like you mentioned earlier, you had to talk the wife into moving to California and doing that whole deal.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know how a lot of people do it, but I mean, you've got to have a strong support group from your wife and your family. Your daughter's an amazing barrel racer and does a lot of cool things. So I really want to give them their notoriety too, because we talk about your team there at KKM, but we don't talk about the team back at home that's helping make the ramen noodles.
Yeah. So, being on the road, I've been on the road for 30 years now, and, picked up my wife and kids and moved to California, back to Indiana. So, my wife's really taken care of the family over the years and raised the kids. I'm not always there. They come to the races, but they also, as they were younger, my wife's dad was into rodeos, and he had his own rodeos, local rodeo there. He rode bulls and all that stuff and horses, but he had his own rodeo that did all the fairs and county stuff. So he always took the kids, the two girls that I have, and Ashley and Mallory, and would go to the rodeos with them. So they learned up riding horses and barrel racing, and he would come over and get them and take them, and while I was gone racing all these years. Now they're all grown up and 30-something years old, been barrel racing older, just locally and stuff like that. My daughter Ashley, last year, she took it a little more serious and started chasing one of the circuits there, and was pretty far up into the standings there. So about halfway through the year, she decided that she wanted to kind of follow through with it, and she ended up at the end of the year as number 5 in the world. And God, I don't know what they call them. There's a couple of different ones there, So she ended up going to the world finals in up the road here in
Guthrie. Yeah.
So and it was during the Chili Bowl. When it started that Wednesday through Saturday. So they knew that we were going to the Chili Bowl and everything. So it was a big deal for them. So me and the wife decided that, we would surprise them and show up. And our original plan was to go, I was going to go on Friday and Saturday, or Friday, come back to Chili Bowl for Saturday, and then go back on Sunday. That was her final day. So of course, Dason had been
doing
hurt.
his little sneaky Pete.
So when they had kind of planned to come in on Thursday, I think it was.
Right.
Or I was going to go Thursday, actually. I was going to go to the rodeo on Thursday, come back Friday, and then go back Sunday.
Yeah.
So on that Thursday, Shonda called and said, hey, I know you're going to the rodeo. We had already made plans. We were going to come in and surprise you guys, and show up with Dason. So I kind of turned it around and decided that we would stay there on.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think here. Yeah, I ended up staying that Thursday, and knew that he was coming, but nobody else in the whole team knew. So kind of got to see Dason come walking into the Chili Bowl. And then I think it was on Friday I left and took off and went and spent the day with my daughter.
So
one of them days, I kept my days all mixed up.
Surprising your daughter, like that's got to be cool for her and for you in the same instance, because you've been gone, but she still knows that dad's that number one cheerleader and dad's still cheering her on, and then getting to see that's got to be pretty special.
Yeah, I mean this was her highlight of her year, so we wanted to be there, part of that, and didn't want to miss it. So it was missed the Chili Bowl, and I've fortunately, I've got the team in the situation and in the spot that I was able to do that, So, and that's what I want to get more time to be able to spend time with family and do different stuff than going to the races all the time.
That's pretty special. Keith, in closing, I always ask people, like, if you had a piece of advice or if you had some words of wisdom that you could give, if it's a driver to drivers or if it's a crew guy to crew guys, you're more than a crew guy. You're more than a mechanic. You're more than you're Kieth freaking Kunz. Like, come on, man. Like, you're just a normal guy to you.
I'm a normal guy.
You're just a normal guy.
Yeah.
But to so many people, they see what you've done and what you've built, and I don't know if it's idolize or they really take what you say and what you do to heart. So what would be like some words of wisdom or advice whenever it comes to racing or life in general?
You got to take chances. You got to go out there and don't be afraid to take chances and go for opportunities that arise. You got to create your own opportunities sometimes, and it was, it's me coming up, everything I've done has been, big steps, dangerous steps, but in the end, you don't know if you don't try, and if you fail, it don't matter.
I like that. You got to take chances. If you fail, guess what?
It don't matter.
It don't matter. That's Kieth Kunz right here on Haas Talks.